Indian subcontinent, and this has consequences that continue to this day. Now, the reason I chose those words were that I was delicately trying not to mention other countries. But the fact is, this was part of what I call the first narrative, the 1962 based narrative. And a number of things happened around the 1962 period, which included changes in Chinese policy vis-a-vis countries in South Asia beyond India. So that is really what I was trying to do.
It's persisting.
Yes. It has consequences. Consequences in the sense it could be the momentum continuing or the policy continuing. But the short point I was making was that the balance of power within the Indian subcontinent is part of the first narrative, the difficult narrative. The second question you asked me about, yes, I did read Ambassador Shamsaran's lecture. I think every culture, every strategic culture has its own advocacy of deception. I'm not there to, I wouldn't say it's right or wrong, but I would point out, for example, so does the Indian strategic culture. The Mahabharata is replete with examples of the value of deception. So I am not sure I would frankly pick uniquely on the Chinese as a cultural trait that they are more deceitful than other people. I'm not sure I would do that. On Myanmar, it's tough to answer a question, what is your take in Myanmar, other than to say that things are moving better, and I think obviously the Myanmaris think so, and I think all neighbors of Myanmar think so. And we have seen develop. I was here in 2007 when our Prime Minister came to Singapore for the East Asia Summit, and I think that was his first meeting with, at that time, Prime Minister Thein Sein, who had just taken over. So I think very few of us would have predicted that the situation would have reached where it has. Now, having said that, this is sort of early days. Where it's going to go, it's very, very hard to say. But I would also remind you that President Obama had a very different take on Myanmar when he came to India. In fact, he made very pointed remarks about it in his speech to the Indian Parliament. So that is also something which people should not forget. On the interdependence, there's this whole how much security and stability does interdependence buy you? I think that's a very tough question. There are people who would, often in literature people point to the First World War as a period where there was interdependence between Germany and UK and say, well, interdependence didn't mean very much. Today, there would be people who would say, well, you can have countries in Northeast Asia which are economically extremely interdependent, but which have still a high degree of political tension among them. I don't think interdependence is a complete solution, but if you give me a choice between having interdependence and not having interdependence, I would vote for interdependence anytime. Because I think it's clearly a net plus. It may not be sufficient, but it has clearly great value. On the other part of the question, which is how do you ensure a situation where the Chinese don't feel that, I'm putting it very more sharply than perhaps the questioner, they don't feel that India is part of a containment of China. I think I would make one remark about what Dr. Goh called the third narrative, which is, you have a point there, which is, at the moment India-China have a first narrative built on the 62 conflict and the border dispute and so on. And the second narrative, which is very economic and global issues driven. But there is a third narrative of a natural competition among states. I mean, in a sense, the answer, what Rahul asked was answered by Professor Muni, which is that countries will do this. I mean, the Chinese had relationships with Soviet Union and with the United States. I mean, today, my sense is a lot of the Chinese concern about what is happening between India and the US is because the Chinese also think that India has behavioral mode which is very similar to the Chinese behavioral mode in using the United States. So the third narrative is there, and the third narrative is a permanent fixture of international relations. It's not going to go away. I mean, nations will be as competitive as individuals are, and it's just something. If they were not competitive, people like me wouldn't be in business.
Great. I think I will give Prof. Guo time to respond to Prof. Muni's question first, and then I'll ask you the other panelists.
Very brief. I totally agree that there's a country between, the competition between country are natural. This is